Hey, welcome to my discussion on who I think would win in a one-on-one combat situation between Theon Greyjoy and Ramsey Bolton. So, I'm going to use books and show just to take a deep dive into the characters and try to come up with a conclusion as to who I think would stand a better chance at winning. We're going to end it all with four main categories, including speed, strength, skill, and intelligence, just to wrap it up and to explain why the winner would be the winner. So, with no further ado, let's begin. We're going to start off with their histories and their backgrounds. So, with Theon, we have the Greyjoy Rebellion. It's basically Balon Greyjoy declaring the Iron Islands independent from the other six kingdoms. He's unsuccessful in this attempt and loses his two eldest sons in the process, which had left Theon the last remaining heir to Pike and the Iron Islands. Eddard took Theon back to Winterfell with him in order to be his ward and an insurance policy to prevent Balon Greyjoy from attempting to rebel again, as his son's head would be the result of another rebellion. Yes, so did this affect Theon? Psychologically, yes, it probably messed him up. Idea of identity and belonging. It's very clear in the books that he felt that he lived under the shadow of Eddard's sword, which definitely would be an influencing factor in messing him up. But I feel like that would be relevant in a different discussion. In this discussion, I feel like he's had at his disposal the best that the North has to offer. Ned Stark was honourable. He didn't deprive Theon of any resources, and he was pretty much privileged in terms of being trained by the likes of Sir Roderick Castell, being educated by Maester Luwin, and I feel like he sparred alongside Jon and Robb. I feel like these are very necessary factors in developing him as a warrior, and why I think he'd stand a very good chance in winning against Ramsey. If we look further down in his life, he had a very prominent position in the Battle for the Five Kings, the War of the Five Kings. He definitely had some important roles, including being a scout for Brynden Tully. Brynden Tully is a very esteemed warrior, and to be alongside him in war is definitely something we should take into account. He bragged about almost fighting Jaime Lannister in combats at the Whispering Woods, and I know that's a claim, and I know Theon's cocky, but for him to make such a claim, as Jaime Lannister, we all know, is one of the greatest sword fighters in the whole of Westeros. For him to make such a claim, he must have, to an extent, the goods. I know it's just a claim, but to claim that you could take on Jaime Lannister is really, I feel like that says volumes. If we look at Ramsey's history on the other hand, Ramsey was a bastard. I feel like we need to quickly discuss something that comes to my mind when we discuss the fact that he's a bastard. Bastards, I feel like the idea of the way they're treated in Game of Thrones is a bit misinterpreted by most people because of the way Jon was treated by Ned. That is not representative of bastards all over Westeros. It's a very, very different experience for all kinds of bastards. Someone like Gendry didn't even know he was a bastard. He was basically just there. He was not cared for. In Dawn, bastards are treated very well. With Roose and Ramsey, Roose didn't really care for Ramsey's existence. He knew of Ramsey's existence, didn't really care, didn't invite him into the castle, gave him no formal training, no education, didn't care for him. And I feel like even in Winterfell, people see Jon and Theon as quite similar. They're both not really part of the Stark family, but they are to an extent. But I thought in general, wards would be treated better than bastards, and I feel like in this case, if we compare someone like Ramsey to Theon definitely would have been treated better. Remember that just because you're a ward, Ned Stark was still knowledgeable and still understood the fact that Theon came from a noble family, a family of lords. So he would have treated Theon with do respect. And considering Ned Stark's character, I don't feel like he deprived Theon of any access to resources. With Ramsey, on the other hand, Roose didn't care for his existence. Roose, at one point, did send him a servant who he named Reek, but that's a story for another day. So basically, we're saying that he learned all his fighting skills from a servant, which I think is undermined, and a reason why I personally think they are really unmatched in terms of their fighting abilities, but a lot of people do see them on a similar level. Alongside that, what else can we say about Ramsey's past? Ramsey did eventually get himself into the castle, but that was through him actually poisoning Bruce's actual son and heir to House Bolton, which does show Ramsey has always had this level of cunning, this manipulating and evilness and whatnot. So I think that should be taken into consideration as well. In terms of fighting experience, I don't think he has had much. Most of his fighting experiences is chasing naked women around forests with his hounds and being brutally aggressive. There is no actual skill that has been shown in the books of him actually knowing how to swing a sword and everything. But we shouldn't take away from the fact that the books do say that Ramsey was very good at thinking on his feet, and he's proven that in the books and in the show many times. His planning, his cunning, it's great. But then, if we're going to talk about cunning and in a one-on-one combat situation, I feel like we need to discuss someone like Bronn. Bronn, we can see, is cunning, has always got something up his sleeve. He fights to win. He doesn't fight for honor. He doesn't fight with honor. We can see this in our first kind of, in the show, our first seeing him fighting, which is against Sir Vardy at the Vale. So in that situation, Bronn didn't really care about honor. He fought quite dishonorably. He fought to win. He didn't really care about the set rules, kind of, not rules, but the unspoken rules of being chivalrous, and you know what I mean. So I feel like Bronn can be described as cunning. I don't think they can be compared. What I'm trying to get at is that I don't think Ramsey could hold himself in a fight in order for him to come up with a cunning plan to win against Theon. I feel like Theon would not give him that opportunity. I don't feel like Ramsey ever puts himself in a vulnerable position. I feel like he's very well planned, very well prepared, and in a one-on-one combat situation, I don't think that would be helpful for him. In him trapping Theon, people always see that as Ramsey being successful and the victor and Theon being the loser, but you got to remember that took weeks of planning and trickery and pretense of pretending to be this person and that person. And if you actually think about it, anyone, maybe not Tommy Shelby or someone like that, but majority of people, actually maybe even Tommy Shelby, but a majority of people can be tricked and can be manipulated and beguiled if you put in the right time, right energy, and you focus on trapping that person. It could be possible. But someone like Bronn, for example, he used his cunning. He didn't plan to fight Sir Vardy. He threw himself in a vulnerable position and was able to hold himself in order for him to conjure up a plan to win in a sneaky, dishonorable way. I don't think that Ramsey can do this. Like in the books, Roose, even his own father, said that Ramsey cannot swing a sword. He swings it like a kitchen knife. There's been no situation where Ramsey has, even in the show, Ramsey doesn't want to put himself in a vulnerable position against Jon and use his forward planning to win in that situation. He would rather be prepared. And I'm saying that goes to show that, I mean, there's he might just be fairly intelligent and just not want to take a risk. But we're talking about one-on-one combat, and in one-on-one combat, there is always risk. When the Hound faced Brienne, or when Oberyn faced the Mountain, these are situations where you can win by being smart, but you're still in a vulnerable position. And I don't think that Theon would give Ramsey any ground. I feel like Theon is too good of a fighter to let Ramsey have the time to prepare to create a plan, if you know what I mean. So anyway, we'll just quickly, because I spent a lot of time talking about that, so we'll quickly use the 4 categories and just try to come up with a conclusion. Beginning with strength. So strength, I think we all know that maybe Ramsey would win this. The books say how aggressive Ramsey was and ferocious, and we all know Theon was pretty lean, fairly skinny. I don't think that being lean does make you weak, because we know that Theon was an amazing horse rider. He was a great archer. He was better than Robb at both things, therefore better than Jon, because as Jon said, Robb was better than him at most things, or nearly everything. So in order to do those things, you would need an element of core strength, which we shouldn't undermine because he's fairly skinny. So I think in this, I'd give Ramsey a 7 and I'd give Theon a 6. So next category would be speed, and Theon, I think, would 100% kill Ramsey in this. If we're looking at Game of Thrones in terms of all the characters, I don't really think there are much better characters, or not better, sorry, faster, more speedier characters than Theon. He considered himself a good dancer in the books. He's lean. He's clearly athletic. So I think in this category, I just don't see much people being up there with speed with him. So I'm going to give him a 9. And in speed, we know that Ramsey in the books, it says that he has a body type to get fat in the future. And there's nothing really about his athletic abilities. So I'm going to give Ramsey a 5 in this category. Okay, so next is intelligence. I think that Theon has made some very stupid decisions, which leads me to question his intelligence. I don't want to say he's absolutely an idiot, but there was a situation where he took Winterfell with 20 men, which is impressive. We need to take that into consideration. Remember how Winterfell was seen as being this impregnable castle. So he did take that 20 men, big deal. But he had the option to leave when Asha/Yara Greyjoy came to visit him at Winterfell, reminded him he should have known already that Ironborn don't do well around so much land. He's already angered the northern troops. They will be on their way back to Winterfell soon, and he thought that he could hold it with 20 men. And he had another opportunity, he had the opportunity with Yara to leave with her, go back to the sea, but he chose to stay, which is pretty silly. He was tricked by Ramsey. I don't know if he's silly for that. That is maybe, I don't know, for him to switch allegiances when Robb sent him to his father and he switched. But I feel like in that situation, his confusion with his identity played a big role, but still he could have dealt with that better if he was a bit more intelligent, I guess. So I've got to give him a 5 in this, maybe even a 4. He hasn't made any smart decisions that I've seen, as opposed to Ramsey, who's been pretty successful in all his attempts Like, he's been pretty smart, he's been cunning, he's been pretty, yeah. We got to give Ramsey an 8 with in terms of intelligence. I mean, in the books, Battle of the Bastards hasn't happened yet, or hasn't happened at all, and we can see that even in the show, he's pretty smart and, you know, doing what he did to Stannis' troops at night. He's I can't say that he's made any stupid decisions in the book. When he met Rodrik Castells and he was charged for murder, I'm sure it was, he was able to trick Roderick Castell into pretending he was his own servant. That's pretty smart. Pretty, you got to be pretty on your feet, on your toes to be able to come up with such a plan, I guess. So yeah, bring him to an 8 and Theon to a 5. And lastly, skill. I think Theon trumps over Ramsey with skill. Theon Archer, be really good at that. Horse Rider, who's really good at that. In terms of being a fighter, he was on the level of Rob and Jon, and we clearly see Rob and Jon as way better fighters than Ramsey. As we put Rob and Jon in different kind of categories of fighters, so I don't see why we shouldn't put Theon up with them, because Theon was as good as them, if not better. Remember, he was older than them, and they probably learned what they learned. Well, Rob probably learned a lot of what he did from Theon. They were like brothers. So I have to, and I feel like if Theon didn't take his diversion into becoming Greek, he would have been just as good as them. He was out in wars fighting against real soldiers. He had a lot going for him in terms of being a fighter, because he had all the skills that were necessary. So I'd have to give him an 8, and I have to give Ramsey. I don't think he has much skill, and I mean, he's skillful in his flaying and sending them off to different people, but I mean, sending bits of Theon to different people. But in terms of being skillful, he hasn't really shown much of any skill, and I don't think flaying is necessary in one-on-one combat. So I'm going to give him a 4 in skill. So overall, if we add everything up, Theon does come out on top. I know it sounds like I have a Theon bias, but it is because I do think Theon is one of the best characters, most interesting characters, deepest, complicated characters in Game of Thrones. So I hope that my bias didn't come through too much, but maybe it did. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree? Do you disagree? Do you think Ramsey would have been more? Think Ramsey's cunning would have helped him win? Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, thanks for listening, and yeah, have a great day.